guys! Welcome back to another episode of No Blurred Lines, Rape Culture in American Television. If you're new to the channel, click there, and that will take you back to the first ever episode where I explain a little bit about what rape culture is and what I'm talking about. It's a good introduction to it. You can also check into the description for a link to the playlist that will have all the previous episodes. They're all really fun and good. I am so excited about this episode because today we're talking about Rick and Morty. If you haven't seen Rick and Morty yet, then you're missing out. You should do it, especially because why would you watch this video if you haven't done it yet? So Rick and Morty is really interesting to me because I've always been a huge Community fan. If you do read the blog post that I wrote about this, I go into a lot of detail about my experience with Dan Harmon's work. Rick and Morty is very interesting in the context of rape culture because it is a comedy show and it is Adult Swim, and those two things naturally are prejudiced in my mind because when I think of Adult Swim, I think of things like Futurama or like Family Guy that don't necessarily treat its women characters well or have storylines that I'm always like super on board with. So I had low expectations on that front. And with comedy, it's especially difficult when talking about rape culture because so many people use the defense that comedians can deal with anything and that's like the point of comedy, which like sure, fine, I get. But because of that, I was very hesitant and very worried about even after I finished it, and I had my interpretations of it, because with comedy you have that line of, are they saying this on purpose or is it an accident? Like, are they using this as a critique of bad people and bad opinions, or are they just having bad people with bad opinions? That I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. That's all in interpretation. So I don't think I could actually say what the intent of the jokes were. I can only say what I took away from it. What I took away from it is that some of the jokes were not okay. Like, there were quite a few rape jokes, more than I thought there would be. Even in like the first season, there's quite a few. There are lines that are both about rape, about assault, or just like really derogatory towards women, and those are the lines that I focused on because they are the ones that I think perpetuate rape culture the most. There are lines about like a roofie serum that Morty uses to get people to fall in love with him. An amusement park inside a guy's body that has a pirate-themed intestinal ride, and they say that we don't whitewash it. The pirates are really rape. There are jokes like, if we drop the soap, it'll fall on our heads and crush us. It'll be really easy to rape us after that. And then, it's not like he's a hot girl. He can't just bail on his life and set up shop in somebody else's. Those are some of the jokes that are in the show that are not super good jokes. Now, I know what you might be thinking. You're thinking, that's not that big of a deal. Those jokes aren't, like, necessarily particularly harsh, especially considering the other things I've talked about in this series. And you're right. The jokes are less intense than slut-shaming or showing lack of consent or any of those other things. But jokes have a very particular and very unique importance in rape culture. And that is that jokes are how we normalize things within our own structure. Jokes are a pillar of rape culture that's both ignored and also acknowledged. It's acknowledged in the fact that people know that inappropriate jokes or rape jokes or jokes against women are around, but it's ignored in the fact that people will excuse it away rather than really boycott those kind of things. And this is usually for the argument that comedians have free reign over anything. There's also the idea that joking about something doesn't really matter because it's just a joke. But nothing is just a joke. When you tell a joke about rape, there are two people that statistically are likely to hear the joke, and that's both a rape victim or a rape survivor and a rapist. And when a rape victim hears a joke about rape, they're forced to relive that experience, to hear their worst trauma trivialized and made into a punchline. And when a rapist hears that joke, they're witnessing it becoming normalized. They think, oh, that guy thinks rape's not a big deal either. He's just like me. So even if the person telling the rape joke isn't a rapist or someone who would be a rape apologist or anything like that, they have to think, am I comfortable with a rapist using what I'm saying to justify his actions? I would assume that the answer is usually no. So when you're telling a joke, you have to think about your audience. Those are people that are going to be affected by your jokes. There's also going to be the other people who are not rape survivors or rapists that are going to hear the rape joke and they're going to relate that topic with something funny or like a pleasurable experience, and they're going to have it become more normalized in their vernacular, and they're more likely to say things like, oh man, they totally raped us whenever they lose a game. They're more likely to see it as something common. So once we think about that, once we know that these jokes have a very specific place in rape culture and society, we can see why including them at all is very risky, and even the best laid out rape joke is still not a good idea. So if Rick and Morty are telling rape jokes and doing things that perpetuate rape culture, then why does it matter if they're not necessarily damaging? If it's not necessarily glorifying the rape, are we allowed to talk about it? It's harder to pinpoint how someone's going to react to it. You have so much less control over the message with a joke because the goal is to make them laugh. And if they're laughing at the rapist, then good. But if they're laughing at rape as a concept or a victim, then not good. It's like if you're doing an emotional scene that's pulling at like terror, like an actual like assault scene, you're probably going to have a lot of control over that message with the way that you film it and the way that you word it, with the way that you show it. You're going to be able to control the audience's reaction to it in a much more visceral way than you are going to be able to do with a joke that's delivered in between other jokes, like in a bundle of jokes, in a happy-go-lucky tone, because that's what comedies are. Lighting's bright. How do you control a message when all you have are the words and the words aren't necessarily good? That gives a lot of power to the viewers, and so you have to be so careful. Can you joke about assault and rape? Yes, but be careful and be aware of what you're putting out there. Overall, I feel like Rick and Morty dances this line too closely. When I was in high school, I had this group of guys that I was friends with who were constantly telling misogynistic jokes. The girls and I would get so offended and so be like, please stop doing that. That's not funny, and we hate it. And they would make fun of us more about it, or if we berated them enough or in public, they would be like, it's just a joke, like, I'm saying it ironically. And it's like, okay, one, I don't believe you, but two, even if you are saying that ironically, you're still like saying it, and it's still hurtful to the people who it's hurtful for, and it's still validating to the people who genuinely think that. So the use of bad jokes or gross humor as ironic commentary is only as good as your audience. It's only as good as the people who are going to be ingesting and consuming that media. So when we were in high school and we were like, like crying, sensitive 16-year-old girls trying not to be awkward and being like, my shoulder blades are inherently sexual, and if I show my kneecaps, I'll ruin a man's education and career and be attacked in the hallways. So like, peace out. I don't want to hear that whenever I'm like still developing my self-worth and my opinions of the world and of life and of men. So like, it's only as good as your audience. So those are most of my thoughts about Rick and Morty. I am on the line a bit with this show more than any of the others because I can't tell if it's a critique or not, and I can't tell if that matters. Joking is hard. Joking is hard. If you want to hear about more of my thoughts on Rick and Morty and this whole phenomenon of like, is it a critique? Does that matter? Check below and go to my website where I will have a blog post that goes more into depth about that. And that's it for this one. If you liked this video, like, comment, subscribe, bell, join into the fun of this little community. That's it. Bye!